welcome to today's webinar. So we're working with our partners from the Manufacturing Technology Centre. Today we've got Nigel, Tom and Phil, who will be hosting the webinar on robotics and automation. I'll leave it to them to tell you all about that. I'm also joined by my colleague Pam from the Growth Hub. So she'll just be giving you a little bit of an insight to what the Growth Hub can do and how we can support you. So just a little bit of housekeeping. Like I said, you won't be seen today. If you just hover over your screen, if you don't know already, you'll have the Q&A chat function whereby you can ask any questions throughout any of the presentation, and you'll also have the chat function. So anything you want to pop in there as well. So with that being said, I'll just hand it over to Pam to introduce the Growth Hub. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Good morning, everybody. My name's Pam Wallace. I'm a Growth Hub Business Advisor for Southern Staffordshire. There's one of my other colleagues online this morning called Becky Parker. Becky manages the business helpline and also does one-to-one diagnostics with businesses. With the Growth Hub, we've got 120 referral partners that we refer into for business support. All of these schemes are completely free of charge. And we have a team of advisors in the north and also the south. And the helpline can be the first point of contact should you have a quick query regarding business support or grants. If you would like any free assessments, please visit the chat box where Becky has put the business helpline and the email address on there. Thank you, and over to you, Nigel. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Melissa and Pam, for arranging the event, and welcome to the MTC's webinar on robotics and automation. I'm Nigel Knapp. I'm the Business Development Manager with our Manufacturing Support Services team. We're the customer-facing arm of the MTC, reaching out to manufacturers of all sizes to understand their challenges and drawing on the expertise of the MTC to help them overcome them. In today's webinar, which we expect to last about 45 minutes, we have two speakers, Phil Jackson and Tom Rook. Phil is the technical specialist for the MTC's Intelligent Automation Group. He has enjoyed a career working in startup ventures to global blue chip corporations, in which time he has applied his skill set to developing many complex automated systems across industrial sectors such as biotech systems for waterborne pathogen detection and sensor technology for automotive condition monitoring. Phil has enjoyed many years of running large, complex industrial research projects, building business cases and overseeing the implementation of new techniques and technology. He's been with the MTC for 7 years and has most recently delivered the MTC's Factory in a Box development. Tom started life as an apprentice toolmaker, gaining experience in designing software to produce jigs and fixturing for robot welders, CNC machining centres and manual welding. As design office manager in the mechanical handling industry for 5 years, Tom's working knowledge of problem solving and designing innovative solutions covered a diverse range of products and sectors from food to nuclear. Tom later moved into specialising in robotics and automation, predominantly in the automotive sector. He now applies his expertise in driving automation adoption within the UK manufacturing in his current role as project leader in the business transformation at the MTC. So the agenda today, the purpose of the webinar is to help you think about where and when to automate, the benefits of automation, what you should consider for implementing into the working environment, and steps you should take to de-risk your investment. Aware that some of you may not have heard the MTC, I will provide a brief introduction before the presentations. After the two presentations, we'll bring you up to date with the MTC COVID-19 program, some contact details, and finish with a brief video of our services. So the MTC are part of the high value manufacturing catapult. There are 7 of us in our cluster, and we're all there to help any UK manufacturer be more competitive on the global stage. The MTC is based in Coventry, and we're the new kids on the block amongst our peers, been formed for 9 years, but we now employ over 800 staff, all there to assist any manufacturer in any sector to improve their quality, cost and delivery performance, but always with an eye on the future. How can we help any manufacturer adopt new technologies at pace and de-risk and accelerate their return on investment? To support that, we have over 500 engineers and a huge workshop full of the latest technologies. We are, for example, the National Centre for Additive Manufacturing or 3D printing. So that's a brief introduction of the MTC. I'd like to now hand you over to Phil Jackson for the first presentation. Over to you, Phil.
Thank you so much for the intro there, Nigel. As already mentioned, I'm Phil Jackson. I'm the technical specialist for robotics and autonomous systems at the MTC. And I just want to give you a little bit of context, a bit of insight into the situation vis-a-vis robotics and automation adoption in the UK, what we think the blockers are, and strategies to make them go away. So moving on to my next slide. I'd like to kick off, as every good presentation will, with some statistics. This just gives you some idea of where we are on the international stage in terms of adopting automation systems. So these are numbers of operational 6-axis robots out there in the market. Granted, it doesn't cover special purpose machines or smart tooling or anything like that, but it's a pretty good indicator. Now, some of those territories aren't going to surprise you. Obviously, China and the USA are right at the top of the ranking, but they're much bigger territories. I just want you to quickly bear in mind the proportion of operational units in China before we move on to the next slide, because there is an interesting point to make there. Some of these places, I say, won't surprise you, but some might. I mean, there are territories of very similar sizes, if not smaller, that have done better at adopting automation than we have. And I want to address the question of why that is. And how we can make an improvement, and also why we think better adoption of automation is a positive thing. I'll move on to the next slide. The next slide helps us to kind of normalize the statistics a little bit. So this isn't the total number of robots in the territory. This is robots per 10,000 manufacturing employees. And you know, I asked you to look at China before, which is of course an international manufacturing powerhouse now. They're only just slightly above us in terms of actual robots in operation per 10,000 employees, which goes to show you just how big the whole operation is. And once again, we've slipped from the last slide where we were at 11th place to 18th when you normalize it, so the picture actually gets slightly worse. Why does this matter? Moving on to the next slide. It matters because every single country that's got a higher manufacturing GVA than us employs more robots per 10,000 people. There is an exception. That exception is India, but they are transforming rapidly. They have a strategy and they're sticking to it. They still have an awful lot of manumatic production operation out there. But there is strong evidence to show that automation and robotics results in higher GVA, results in higher productivity. We are, by the way, still a serious competitor on the manufacturing world stage. I'll move on to the next slide. So why is it that this is happening? Why aren't we investing more? There are some things which are associated with the UK market, the UK situation, that are worth considering. Opacity of the automation market, and what do I mean by that? There is a bit of a bootstrap issue here. If you approach automation suppliers and you point to a certain part of your production system and say, I think this isn't good enough, I think it needs automating, the chances are you're going to get 3 entirely different solutions, 3 entirely different quotations. And if you don't have the tools within the organization, which is to say the experience, to make a determination about which one of those quotations, which one of those solutions is actually going to deliver value for you, then you're not in a great place to make a good investment. And currently, the way the market is in the UK, you aren't helped very much. Certainly not as compared to the automation market in some of the comparable territories. This leads to risk aversion. Once again, if you don't know what a good investment is going to look like, then it's associated with unknown risks. So that also bubbles into understanding the benefits you can actually get out of the system. Once again, if you're going to make a big investment, and automation, well, it is of course perceived to be a big investment. It doesn't necessarily have to be, by the way. You can certainly start with relatively modest investments and work up. But once again, unless you can actually make that business case and know what kind of returns you're going to expect, then the risks are too high, and you don't have any foresight of how good that investment actually is, which of course leads to accessing finance. The business case will help you to access finance, whether you've got internal purse string holders or you're looking for external financiers. You'll need that business plan. You'll need to be able to project forward and say, these are all the costs that we're going to expect, but these are all the returns that we're going to expect as well. And then, of course, there's that last issue, which is actually being able to embrace that technology when it lands on the shop floor. Having the skills, having the understanding, having the culture to be able to adopt the stuff and look after it so it remains productive on an ongoing basis. I'll move on to the next slide. So I want to go a little bit further into that, and this is from the time-generated experience of myself and colleagues like Tom. Why does adoption of automation fail? Why is there a perception that the risk is too high? And maybe, you know, if there are pitfalls, how do we avoid them? Well, the first one is that there's an incorrect analysis of the task to be automated. That's pretty classic. So if you were to just point at a particular part of a production system and say, well, I want to put automation or robotics in there without doing a proper task breakdown and really understanding what all of your KPIs are, and there's a very good chance that what you're going to end up purchasing from the market is a generic solution that may have been applied to other things before. It's been developed, it's there, and you'll buy it, you'll onboard it, and it won't actually achieve what you need it to achieve because you haven't done an analysis about really what it is that you're trying to achieve. Have you broken down the task? Have you taken a product's eye view of exactly what you need to do to that thing in order to put value in? Do you understand what your market is going to do in the next sort of 5 years? How flexible does the system have to be? All of these things are incredibly important to getting it right. Incorrect or insufficient calculation of the costs and returns, and that's largely associated. You know, obviously you can't make a business case unless you understand all of these things well. Bad specification of equipment, just a little one on that. Of course you have to understand what you're trying to achieve, but then of course you have to be able to communicate that as well. Two sides to this. There's the fact that you've effectively communicated what it is that you're trying to achieve in order to be able to form a contract with the person that's going to supply it to you. But the other side to it as well is making absolutely sure that A, your specification is a good one, B, your specification is completely understood. There is no such thing as a perfect specification. That's important. And then, of course, these things can be can result in the delivery of an ineffective solution. The number of times that I've seen what are effectively white elephant projects in factories, it's a little heartbreaking, actually. Somebody has onboarded an industrial robot. They brought in a piece of equipment which ends up gathering dust and return no value, or just holding things up or showing itself to be ineffective enough just to be taken off at some stage. It's a real shame. And then, of course, there's unanticipated changes to product demand. So if those things haven't been mapped out and you don't know to what extent your equipment has to be flexible to deal with future changes in your output, then you've got a good chance of, unfortunately, losing out on your investment. I made a point there, and I like this picture because it's particularly stupid, but yeah, this is the point. Dropping automation into your unprepared work area, it's unlikely to result in success. There are a whole load of things that you need to work through first. And in fact, I would suggest that specifying and purchasing the equipment is one of the last things you have to do. There are lots of other things to consider first. I'll move on to the next slide. I'm just going to make, well, actually, another tortuous analogy, but it's an important one to remember. So I mentioned before, just pointing to something on the production line that seems not to be as effective as you'd like it to be, or something that you like to automate, and then saying, we'll buy a piece of equipment to augment that, to make things better. Well, if you just do that, if you just observe something, for example, a person is doing and think, we'll stick a robot in there, maybe on to the next slide. Well, this can lead to an unfortunate and inappropriate deployment of technology. We call this SpongeBob. It's obvious to anybody with any industrial experience that washing a car with an industrial robot like this is an incredibly expensive and inefficient way of doing it. And yet, we do see the equivalent of this out there quite a lot, I'm sad to say. Now, obviously, if you've understood the task and you've broken it down, you know what kind of throughput of, in this case, cars you need, and you have a good understanding of all of the things that have to interact with that car, moving on to the next slide, you're going to end up with a completely different solution. Something like that, something we've all seen. And that, in this context, is a special purpose machine. So there's a decision point to be made there once you've really understood what you're trying to achieve. Is the business case going to be powered by a special purpose machine? Does that investment make sense? Have you got a throughput situation that requires that? Do you need the flexibility of an industrial robot? Maybe actually the best solution is to give people smart tools and augment the work of the humans. Once again, if you haven't calculated this, you wouldn't know. And the good news is there are established tools, templates, and methods for doing it. Moving on to the next slide. So just before I finish off, I just wanted to labour the point again. There are so many different parts of your business that are going to be affected by this, and there are so many different parts of your business that need to be prepared. So the first thing you have to do, on the far left of this diagram, work out what your aspirations are. Yeah? Do you have particular quality requirements? What's the product mix going to be like? The volume, do you have cost targets? All of those things. Let's really, really understand holistically what your production system has to do. What you're trying to avoid here is what I call a sticking plaster automation. You stick a piece of equipment in the production system because something's getting old, on the basis that you've reacted to the fact that it becomes apparent something has to improve, instead of looking at the whole production system and saying, let's really deconstruct this, let's really understand what it's trying to achieve. When you've understood all of those metrics and all of the aspirations, obviously a concept's important, and once again, it could be smart tools, robots, you might need AGVs, it might be a special purpose machine. We can calculate business models behind all of these things and work out what's the most appropriate. And obviously once you've done that, your costs and revenues can be evaluated. You can make a business plan. You can understand exactly what your position is financially and what your investment looks like. And then you're in a position to adjust business functions, whether it's the culture to be able to look after the equipment on an ongoing basis, or indeed be able to spot opportunities in the future as well for new automation, because that's also important. So many other things are going to be affected and need to be adjusted to make good use of it. And once you've done that, the last point, road mapping. What do I mean by that? It's planning. You're going to implement an automation milestone in the next couple of months, maybe. Or where do we go from there? What kind of IT infrastructure are we going to need from that point on? What sort of training are we going to need from that point on? What does the future look like? And how are we going to keep driving increased productivity through the use of technology?
So that's actually my last slide. So I'd like to hand back to Nigel, because I believe there's a little time for maybe some Q&As.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks very much. And yeah, so Q&A, I'm going to ask Melissa to step in here. Melissa, have you got any questions from the audience, or have you got any questions there?
So for you, Phil, what's the typical installed cost of a robot?
So the typical installed cost?
Yeah.
I broke up slowly. It's quite difficult to say because it can vary very wildly. But I would say under relatively straightforward cases where you have to put in a robot with the rest of the paraphernalia that goes to the cell, like the guarding and the rest of it, you're probably looking at somewhere between 150 and 200,000 pounds. Although a full industrial robot may or may not be the answer to your problem. It could be that the business case is going to be driven by something which is a lot more a lot lower cost, let's say.
Great. Got another question. As we come out of lockdown and furlough, how do you think this will affect decisions regarding automation?
Well, I think some time for reflection has already happened during the furlough period, and this is something that we've noticed across the board. People have kind of been forced to take a step back and really think about the future and some strategic planning around, what's going to happen to the production systems. So a lot of the kind of a lot of the building blocks of putting together strategies have already been kind of put in place, and I am expecting quite an uptake in automation adoption when we come out of lockdown and push on into hopefully a production spike and the return of manufacturing prosperity.
Great. And one last question we got here is, Our operations are currently very manual and we don't have any experience or skills in automation. So what would you recommend as the next step?
The first thing to do is take, I would say the MTC can support you to have a good kind of holistic look at the production system and try and identify opportunities. So what we wouldn't suggest is that you go full bore overnight and sweep aside what you already have and put in some sort of fully automated lights off system. It's all about making a plan to slowly and incrementally change the production system such that you have this sort of North Star goal of a fully automated production system in the crosshairs, but you also understand what the costs, liabilities, and returns of every step of the path are, on the way there. So an organization like the MTC can help you to identify those opportunities, identify sensible steps that you can take, low risk steps that you can take, and help to build a plan to do it.
Great, thanks, Tom. Phil, sorry.
Pleasure.
Okay, is that the end of the questions, Melissa? I'll move on now.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you,
Okay,
Nigel.
super. So I'd like to go on to the second session now, which is all about sort of practicalities and affordable steps you can take. And over to Tom.
Thanks, Nigel, and thanks, Phil. So hello, everyone. So I'd like to cover in a bit more detail some of the points raised in Phil's slides. So unfortunately, this will still only be an overview, given the time constraints, but I'll try and give you as much detail as possible on the important elements. So what we'll be covering is affordable steps you can take within your business, different levels of automation that will be viable for your needs, some examples of working with MTC clients, and we'll do a recap of the key steps to safely adopt automation. Next slide, please. So on this slide, you can see a diagram that is used by the MTC to support SMEs and mid-cap sized businesses in adopting automation. And you may notice central to that diagram is the model actually centers around a business case, which will be the business case for the automation intended. So how this diagram works is, firstly, you need to assess the current state process that you've identified for automation. And then you need to understand the actual goals and the company's drivers moving forward into the future. And quite often to achieve this goal and this future vision is to take a phased approach to automation, as Phil alluded to. So I've highlighted 6 key areas about this model on the right-hand side that I'd like to go through in a bit more detail with you. So firstly, identifying opportunities within your manufacturing processes. So what do I mean by this? So for example, high accuracy components may result in less complex and costly solutions. If your processes are currently already repeatable, this could complement automation and reduce the amount of handling technology you'll need. And high volume of product. This will reduce machinery downtime for changeovers and subsequently complement light-out manufacturing. So there's just a couple of things to look out for with process. And number 2, business case. So this is an important element. A localized business case for the identified process will indicate the benefits the automation will bring. And it's important to use the relevant true data for this exercise. If this is not done correctly, it will compromise return on investment you calculate. Number 3, select automation. Ensure to select the correct level of automation to suit the business case. There are many types of automation to choose from, and I'll cover this in a bit more detail in my next slide. Element number 4, evaluate the impact. The impact on automation within a business that's looking to adopt is quite critical. Just a mere mention of automation can unsettle a workforce and cause staffing issues. Also, factory flow and layout. Quite often we've seen large companies drop automation in and rip it straight back out because they've not fully understood the impact the automation will deliver. Quite possible can create bottlenecks or move bottlenecks, so some consideration is needed in this area also. Number 5, prepare an RFQ. So arguably the most important element in my opinion. So preparing an RFQ or a request for quotation is fundamental, as it dictates where the scope for automation to the vendor starts and stops. and anything in between. If the RFQ is not specific enough, an integrator will make assumptions which could bring risks also. And there's nobody that knows your process better than yourselves, the company themselves. So the integrator is fully dependent on what you document within this specification. A lack of clarity within this RFQ will result in the solution failing to meet your business needs. And number 6, where to buy. It's important to work with the appropriate size integrator. Too large or too small may lead to delays or lack of support in the installation. Next slide, please. So understanding the level of automation right for you. Some companies opt for second-hand robots, as this can be an affordable way into adopting automation, but exercising caution in this area is advisable due to the following reasons. Age of the robot. Post-2006 models will have newer safety compliant technology, which is a lot easier to install. Anything pre-2006 may require hardwiring of safety or additional inputs and outputs. It's quite laborious, time-consuming, complex, and a lot of integrators wouldn't be that interested in undertaking that kind of work. Condition of the robot. Signs of collisions may indicate the robot has been mistreated, which could impact repeatability and accuracy of the unit. And support. Parts and servicing could be problematic due to obsolete parts only being available on the second-hand market, if at all. And to give you a scenario of this, if you have a second-hand robot and a part goes down a gearbox or encoder or something, your production line will go down then. If you can't hold stock of that replacement part, you could have a long lead time ready for it to be delivered to your site, and then you've got to switch on the correct service people to actually undertake that work in itself. So yeah, caution is needed with second-hand robots. Oh, another thing with the second-hand robot element is we do see quite a lot of companies that will get offered a bargain, too good to be true, a second-hand robot going at a snip, and they'll basically purchase this robot with a view to using it and installing it on their shop floor. But essentially, they're trying to force this unit into an application, and that quite often doesn't work out. So fundamentally, you have a quite expensive ornament for your shop floor, which is not really appropriate. Moving over to collaborative robots. Now, collaborative robots are designed for direct human interaction in a shared space. The reach and the payload can be restricted in comparison to their industrial counterparts. And typically, they're commonly used in more clean environments and may not fare so well in more challenging environments, such as foundries, environments such as that. Safety in and around collaborative robot systems is still a bit of a grey area, to be honest. And from a directive level, the company installing them has to ensure that they have done their due diligence to make sure the system is safe for use. And this is done by being compliant to both ISO 10218-1 and -2. Regarding the risk of these robots, there's different types of safety that collaborative robots have, and they normally rely on speed and force or sensors and software that ensure safe behaviour. So really, you need to make the correct assumption of which type of safety is suitable for your application. Moving over to industrial robots, some integrators will design a system for you, may default to manufacturers they are most familiar with. This isn't always the most cost-effective solution. It may be an option to free issue the robots. It's becoming more commonplace to do this. To free issue the robots to the integrator. This allows you to shop around different manufacturers. Quite often will bring cost savings, as there's quite a competitive market out there, and most manufacturers will undercut one another for market placement. So which one? There are many different types of robots, and often people default to a 6-axis robot, which isn't always the most effective solution. Less costly robots may be more suitable for your application, such as a 4-axis robot or 5-axis robot. So it's really a case of understanding what the requirement is for your application. Environment. different robots are designed to suit different environments, such as foundry spec robots, high accuracy robots, sterile environment robots, or high speed robots. Again, it's worth really looking out there to see which robot is suitable for your needs. And moving over to other types of automation, this is one of the key areas for me, and quite often we work with SMEs that think they need a robot and they don't. It's important to consider that there's other types of automation that could offer a better solution for common industry requirements. A lot of different sectors have developed equipment that can cross over into other sectors. So it's worth pursuing what's current in other sectors for similar kind of issues. A semi-automated assisted solution may be useful rather than a fully automated solution. As Phil alluded to, you've got your future vision where you want to be a fully automated light cell production requirement, but to get there, it may be an incremental step change to enable that future vision to be realised. Also, there's SpongeBob. So as Phil has again alluded to, that there's always a best solution for every application. It's not always a robot. There's a special purpose machinery that could be deployed, and many companies could offer the special purpose solutions which could be more suited to common industry applications. Next slide, please. So examples of working with clients. We were at the company in the construction sector, and this was a typical case of an RFQ not being prepared correctly. So this company we worked with ordered a special purpose machine, which when installed didn't meet the throughput requirements it was purchased at. The reason being is that they couldn't load raw material into the machine efficiently. They were using a forklift truck with 3 or more operatives, which was a dangerous, costly and very unproductive procedure. So the workforce and the management team got together. They concluded the results of this issue was laying the deployment of a robot. So they engaged with the MTC to create some concepts for this solution. But shortly after their initial engagement, we realised that a robot was not the solution. It was best suited for this application. A semi-automated solution was needed to allow for the variance in the product. So what resulted was a special purpose semi-automated system that gave the flexibility to the operative. It was efficient. They actually hit the throughput on the machine, and furthermore, the budget they anticipated to install a robotic system was some £100,000 plus. The solution ended up with was less than 15k, so it was a very happy client. Next slide, please. So on this slide, it demonstrates another client we worked with based in Andover. The client was an aluminium die-cast company. They wanted some machine tending a solution for one of their 5-axis milling centres. They'd optimised their current process. They'd purchased new machines to fulfil their growth. It was a case of deploying automation to get more out of the machines or move premises so they could purchase more CNCs. So we reviewed their range of products to identify which were best suited for automation. And once identified, we produced a business case to highlight the benefits that automation would bring. This resulted in a 40% increase in machine availability. So the return on the investment was extremely healthy due to the skill level of the staff, and the opportunities the automation would bring included more valuable machine time, improved lead times for new clients and potentially existing clients and new clients, the ability to take more work on and increase profitability to buy more automation and grow. So we produced 3 concepts. The first concept was a collaborative robot with bin picking technology. This allowed operatives to do secondary operations in and around the machines, such as measuring and deburrs, such like. Concept 2 was a similar solution, but with an industrial robot. And concept 3 was a turnkey solution, which is already proven and out there in the marketplace. This was a higher investment, but lower risk, as I say, 'cause it's already been proven, it's already been installed in similar applications. The SME in question could go and look at this solution being used and make an informed decision. So once they chose to concept 3, which is a turnkey solution, we then looked at optimizing their end effectors and gripping solutions for automation. And to do this, we 3D printed some prototypes to understand the benefit and the drawbacks and optimize the design. So again, it's a very happy customer, and they use the MTC to de-risk a number of applications for them, and it worked very well. Next slide, please. So to recap on the key criteria to adopt automation, that would be prepare a solid business case, first and foremost, determine from the business case the right level of automation. Again, this is driven by the return on investment. Prepare a robust specification, key, and know which integrators are right for you. The MTC can offer, or any other customer centre for that matter, can offer an unbiased advice to support these steps. And once they are done, you are ready to adopt automation. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tom. So, Melissa, have we any questions?
Yep, so thank you for that, Tom. Just a question here. I've heard cobots are slow. What is your experience?
Well, collaborative robots, cobots, are generally slower than industrial robots because obviously they were designed to work in around a human shared space. So that's true, but I mean, a lot of the marketplace is changing now with collaborative robots. The payload's getting a lot higher, they're coming a lot faster, but it's really depending on application. If there's an application where a human isn't present or nearby, it's completely viable for a higher speed cobot, absolutely.
Thanks, Tom. Another one here. I'm worried that an integrator would just duplicate the work that the MTC has done, and I end up paying twice for the same piece of work.
It's an interesting one. That's not necessarily the case. I mean, we use an analogy sometimes where if you're going to build a house or have an extension to your house, you wouldn't just engage with the builder and say, build me a house or put me a room on there. You know, you go to an architect and you get plans drawn up, and they would follow best practice. And this is what we aim to do. We have to, you know, not too prescriptive on the end solution, but the specification, for the important stuff, the throughput, the process, the requirements of the cell, we outline that to make sure that they've got a guideline to you know, the fundamentals of what's required for the client.
Great, thank you, Tom. One last question here. Are there tools out there to help me simulate the robot installation before I invest?
There are. I mean, this is an expensive piece of work. Even when you have the right software, it's still quite difficult to replicate a production environment in this software. There's lots of little nuances that the software can't pick up. So what we do on smaller projects with SMEs, we do an Excel-based simulation. So we put all the key criterion for the process, and then we actually do an assessment whether this automation is viable or not, or it will achieve the throughput that's required. It's quite a simple task, and it's very effective. And I would advise, unless you're mid-cap plus size company, to pay thousands of pounds for a simulation isn't always bring that many benefits.
Great, thank you.
Okay, is that all the questions on that section? So just like to round off the presentation now. Just first of all, just to outline the other support that is available through the COVID-19 crisis in conjunction with Stoke and Staff's Growth Hub, backed by the MTC. So we have some other webinars coming up. I think we've got covering. I think we've got coverage. What we're going to cover now. I think leading from a distance is later on. But all of these will be recorded and available on YouTube. So you'll get links sent out to you. Will be available to you via the Growth Hub. In addition to that, if you choose to say as a sort of impartial sort of government-backed research and technology organisation, we've got lots of people, lots of engineers that you've got access to. So if you have any particular challenge you'd like just a fresh pair of ears or eyes to have a chat through with, then by all means get in touch with us, and you can have a 30-minute conference call with one of our advisors. And if you are an SME, a small and medium enterprise, that's the 250 employee or less criteria, then we do have access to grant funding that basically offers you a sort of effectively a 50% match. And we are also very conscious at the moment that smaller businesses in particular are having maybe the cash flow issues, etc. So we are being a little bit more flexible than maybe usual to try and help you ease that burden and see you get the returns as fast as possible. So it can be negotiable on payment terms, etc. To kick the process off, we offer a complimentary visit, which is the sort of thing I do, and I can bring along the likes of Tom or Phil with me if needed. And that's to come along, look at your business, understand your strategy, where you're trying to get to, and look at those, what are the KPIs and drivers for change, and then say, let's have a look around the facility with all of the social distancing rules adhered to see how can we help you in whatever respect, with that process, people, systems, or technology, to get you from where you are to where you want to be as fast as possible at the lowest risk. If you're interested in any of what I've said, then either contact Stoke-on-Trent or there's an email address at the bottom there, mss@the-mtc.org. Ping an email to there and one of us will get in touch with you to see how we can help. Just like to finish off now by running a very short video on the services we offer.
We can deliver value to businesses quickly.
Working with clients, strengthen our businesses.
Using their challenges and the technology that's right for them.
£50 million worth of the latest manufacturing technology.
Fresh thinking that you could not access any other way.
Doing things out of the ordinary is not out of the ordinary for us.
Working with MTC has been fantastic. I believe this is a smart approach to business.
We've turned over 30% more orders. We actually haven't employed anybody else.
We've managed to double our turnover in a period of 2 years without increasing our overhead costs.
We focus on helping Great British manufacturing get even better.
So thank you very much for listening. I think we finished more or less bang on time. And so there's the email address if you'd like further contacts. And I'd like to hand back to Melissa now just to close out. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nigel, and thank you to Tom and Phil today. We do have two attendees, Robert and Steve, who may have seen the chat, to welcome any questions from you both. So if you've got any questions, just feel free to pop them in the Q&A or even in the chat box where you've seen my colleagues mention that you can ask any questions. And whilst we wait for those questions to come through, if we've got any, I'd just like to thank the MTC very much for co-hosting this webinar with us today. I think it's a topic that's quite important, especially with the climate that we're going through. So for you guys to have answered those questions and talk about that, we're really grateful for it. So thank you to you guys. And thank you to Pam and Becky for also being on the panel as well. Just to let all attendees know, this webinar has been recorded. Turnaround time might be around 1 working week, just to get it edited and put on our website. And I think that, Nigel, you're happy for the presentation to be sent out to the delegates as well, aren't you?
That's fine. Yeah, I'll send a version through to you to issue. Yep.
Fab. And thank you, Steve, for just popping there that he'll follow up with the contacts offline. So with that being said, just like to thank you all again for attending, and just keep a lookout either on the Growth Hub website or MTC website for any upcoming events. So thank you very much.